Warning: while I'll be taking an objective look at the tracks, the ranking will overall boil down to my opinion. So don't come screaming to me about Mario Circuit 1 being better than Donut Plains 1.
Hello, you beautiful persons. I love myself some good Mario Karts, especially of the DS variety. It's got some janky controls and some really annoying CPUs. But outside of that, it's one of the most charming games in the series, and I want to talk about it. So, I'm going to be ranking the tracks from best to worst. I'd like to add really quick, I had to plug a keyboard into my DS in order to capture this footage. So if my gameplay seems janky, I promise I'm better with like an actual controller. And I've hidden some little jolteons throughout the video. Totally not anything else. So if you see one, then good job, I guess. So let's get started with the nitros and we'll move on to the retro tracks. I'll be describing my thoughts on each of the tracks, then putting them into this fancy smancy tier list I got here. Okay, enough chit chat. The first track in the game. Typically mid-tracks throughout the series, but made to be memorable and seem important to the game overall, but there's never that much to them. And that's exactly what this is. It's nothing fancy, just 2 long lines and 2 long turns to make an 8. Thinking about it, I'm surprised they didn't add this to Mario Kart 8. This track is infamous for practicing snaking due to these long narrow paths. Unfortunately, I am horrendous when it comes to snaking. I just can't do it, man. I try, and I get it sometimes, but then my thumb starts to cramp and I get sad. So, snaking will not be a part of these rankings. As for the gameplay, playing this track with my slightly above average Mario Kart skills does kinda suck. There's never that many good places to like catch up with the CPUs. The only place you can really get a bunch of drifts in is at these 2 turns. But even then it doesn't help with these super long stretches, which is mostly due to the rubber banding issue in this game. Just winning here feels completely up to the items that you get and just what happens in the race. However, the aesthetic of the track being this little go-karting area is really cute. I especially like this little overhang here. It's just about charming enough to make this track be in C tier. What is going on in Yoshi Falls? Why is there a massive Yoshi egg in the middle? Is it just like a matter of time until it hatches or something? I'm a little bit scared, but also intrigued. The track is pretty cool too. It's just about as basic as you can get without it being too basic, you know what I mean? I mean, it's literally just a circle. But with the addition of these waterfalls and these little bridges, it actually makes it pretty fun. They provide the choice of going the top or the bottom path, with the first being a decision between item box or speed, second waterfall requiring a mushroom, and third just having some boxes falling into the lake. Makes this part kinda useless, but who cares? It's a really charming track with all of its tiki thatches and just a pleasing color palette to look at. I'm also just a sucker for waterfalls. They're so pretty. I don't think it's quite an A rank for me, it is still just a circle. Though bonus points for the possible Godzilla Yoshi. High B tier. Cheep Beach is so swag. There's been plenty of beach stages in Mario Kart, but this is by far my favorite one. I don't know if it's just this pier or the shifting tide, maybe even this little jungle part you get to go through, but all of it has so much charm while being an absolute blast to play. I especially love how many different options there are to approach the open beach area. You can follow the sand path, hope the tide is low to cut some corners, or just use a mushroom to blast through. And god, have I mentioned how charming it is? We got this little lighthouse up on the jungle on the island. There's a weird rock formation you get to drive through, or just these little houses on the pier. Like, look at them, they're so cute. Also, there's some forest ambience when you go through the jungle. I think it's really nice. It's hard to describe in words how much love I feel for this track. There's just so much effort put into its design for a simple beach track. Overall, I think the ranking of the track comes down to whether or not you like beaches, so S tier. Luigi's Mansion is disappointing to me in many ways. Which I hate to say because I love Luigi's Mansion. I'm a huge sucker for anything horror, especially something from Nintendo. Making Luigi's Mansion easily one of my favorite series that they've made. So having it in the form of a track is super cool, but the execution is just sorta lousy. There's many problems I'll talk about, but my number 1 is you're only in the mansion itself for like 10 seconds, and the rest of the track is outside. Yeah, there is an outside part in the game itself, but it's nowhere near this big. And where did these walking trees and huge mud pits come from? It just feels like they're doing a disservice to this masterpiece of a game. They didn't even include any of the ghosts from it. The closest thing we get are these boos and some textures ripped from the game and put into paintings, randomly throughout the house. God, the music isn't even remotely related to Luigi's Mansion. Huh. I might be going too hard on the track. The interior is still pretty sizable, and a good portion of the outside is pretty accurate to how the game is. And they use textures from Luigi's Mansion, or at least it looks that way. So the models and stuff are still really nice to look at. I also like the overall mood here. They kept it dark and gloomy, which is perfect. The mud and the walking trees aren't even that bad. I just don't know why you're here. But it's okay, you get a low B tier. To start off the Flower Cup, we're given a desert. And that's about all I have to say for this track. It's a desert. Don't get me wrong, I love deserts in games. Too much sometimes. But this one just feels kinda bland. It looks like it takes some inspiration from Mario Bros. 3 deserts, with these pipes thrown around and the angry sun throwing some fireballs in laps 2 and 3, which I actually think is pretty cool. Wish they kept the pipes purple instead of making them red though. But despite the cool inspiration and multiple set pieces, it just feels a little stale to me. I'm not really sure why. I mean, I want to like the track for its aesthetic, but I can't bring myself to favor it. I mean, come on, deserts can be so much cooler than just sand. Plus, playing on it can be kind of annoying. It is rightfully called Desert Hills, as there's a bunch of hills to go across. Especially with this part at the end with some sharp turns. Maybe a bit too sharp if I'm being honest, they can be kind of hard to make. But like, that's it. The obstacles are just hills in a desert, with some pokies and the sun throwing his balls at you eventually. I never really had problems with the obstacles either. I may get hit by the fireballs once in a Blood Moon, but that's all I can really give it. There's this shortcut here which I guess is cool, and the music is admittedly pretty funky, but I can't bring myself to give it any higher than a C tier. Now, Delfino Square is interesting, because I love it, and just about everything it offers is good and makes me feel happy. It's just this fun little town you get to drive through and experience. It can do no wrong. Only real complaints I have for this track is this little tight part where you're having to drive down 2 separate alleyways through the houses. You just don't have that much room to make turns easily without hitting walls, especially in 150. And this shortcut is a little annoying because it makes it really easy to launch yourself into the ocean, though bonus points for having a shortcut at all. I also really love this shortcut. Less known, but really cool. Everything else about the track is just super fun and full of charm. Especially this bridge. Making it when it's at its peak was literally the best thing as a kid. I love just being launched. In general, the vibes here are just amazing. I've always loved playing this stage to admire the design. This Pianta statue is also kinda sexy. S tier. From what I've seen online, this is easily the most beloved track from this game. And I mean rightfully so. From the special sound effects, to the unique theme of a pinball machine, to just how colorful and vibrant the map is. The entire track is a blast from start to finish. I also love how intricate they made the actual machine part and everyone just ends up going straight. I can respect the dedication and it's fully utilized in the mission mode, but it's still funny to me. The only problem I have with this track is how sharp the turns are. It's a game of constant drifting, which can be fun, but I also ended up not fully making a lot of the turns. It could simply be a skill issue. Probably is. They did put these extensions here to help you make turns, which is greatly appreciated. Also, the balls can be kind of annoying. I like the unpredictability of them, and it's funny when a friend is randomly smacked so you can pass them. But it's annoying and unfair when it happens to me. So while I adore this track and I think it's amazing, I do have some minor annoyances. That doesn't stop it from getting a high A tier though. This is a gift from God himself, a mere fraction of heaven for us to experience in a simple-minded kart racing game released in 2005 for the Nintendo DS line of handhelds. Sorry, I don't know what got over me. Shroom Ridge is admittedly a simple-looking track at first glance. And it is, but I find it super fun. There's tons of turns all through the track where you can satisfyingly link drifts together. There's a fun shortcut here you can take if you have a triple or golden shroom. And you can dodge and weave throughout the traffic, which I actually find kind of fun. It's more predictable than the previously mentioned balls from Waluigi Pinball, and every time I ran into a car it's either due to a CPU or simply a skill issue on my end. I also just love the design for this track in general. From going through the splits in the ridge, this big open field in the middle, of course, who doesn't love a good tunnel? Then finishing off by going across this cliffside, where you get to see distant mountains and a forest far below. I also like all the little billboards and signs telling you what's going on, they're very cute. And any course with these moving item boxes gets a thumbs up from me. There are some problems with it, primarily the straight path being kind of annoying to deal with, and the lack of shortcuts throughout the track in general. Yeah, there is this one, but you need to have 3 mushrooms to pass it, so it's not easily accessible. Regardless of these flaws though, I have a soft spot for this track. It's definitely not a track for everybody, but it's a track I love and grew attached to while playing it as a kid, so it'll always hold a special mixture of charm and nostalgia for me. Also, the music do be kinda boppin'. A personal S tier. Switching over to the Star Cup, we got good old DK Pass. Not entirely sure how Donkey Kong is involved with this track. Maybe this isn't the same mountain range as DK Summit or something. Food for thought. Outside of the weird naming, this is a pretty fun track. You're driving up a mountain, avoiding oddly placed snowmen and snowballs coming down to crush you. And once you get to the top, you get to cruise down through some bumpy, snowy terrain, avoiding the snowballs going down with you. This part can be weird to control, but I've never had a big problem with it. A really fun concept, and honestly a really solid execution. Only complaint I have is that part at the end when you're launched down. I feel like another way of going down would have been much cooler, but I don't mind too much. Of course, I shan't fail to mention one of the main staples of this course. This super cool tunnel. Love tunnels. I'm a tunnel lover if you couldn't tell. Oh yeah, also this item box. To my knowledge, this is the only time something like this has been done in any Mario Kart track, like, ever. A little overpowered, but also kinda funny that you can just get a star in first place. Overall, I've never really had any major gripes with this track. At the same time though, there's nothing that makes me go, oh boy, DK pass! Maybe it's just up to what type of track aesthetic you like. So for me, it'll have to be a high B tier. Oh boy, I love clocks. Clockly clock, tick-tock clock, clock, cock. Tick-Tock Clock is a charming little map, taking inspiration from what I assume is the clock stage in Mario 64, with a similar vibe such as all the greats, color scheme, and, of course, clocks. Despite taking inspiration, this is still a really cool concept that the game makes its own, with a bunch of neat ideas like a pendulum obstacle, riding on the gears over the clock void, dodging the hands of a clock, just a bunch of clock parts that are very cleverly implemented. Bonus points for the fact that each lap some of the obstacles go counterclockwise too. The only real complaint that I have is also the obstacles. The design is super cool and charming, but god, giving them hitboxes makes them frustrating. Especially the hands. This, coupled with the fact that there's no iframes in Mario Kart DS, you can just keep boosting it to the minute hand with no escape, and it's all because you just chose the wrong path at the wrong time. Time. And there's been countless times where I've run into a pendulum and just get launched off and have to deal with waiting to be dragged back up. In general, it's really fun and the aesthetic is perfectly executed. Despite how playing it can be tedious sometimes, that's never ruined it for me. Can't forget to mention the major bonus points for the gears at the end that you get to ride to get a little bit of a boost. A solid A tier. Mario Circuit. What to say about Mario Circuit? Like, genuinely, I have no idea. What do I say? Mario Circuit is just a staple of the Mario Kart games, with a new one being added to every game under the same name each time. They always consist of a grass-filled raceway, some pipes skewed about, almost always Peach's Castle somewhere in there. And, of course, it's exactly the same here. Though I will say I particularly like this rendition of the track. I mean, yeah, it's just as generic as always, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a sort of comfort to it. And even then, the decorations have always kind of popped to me in a weird way. And this one's just really fun to race on. Dodging the fireballs from the piranha plants and making sharp turns has always felt satisfying. And none of it has really ever felt that unfair either. So while I don't have any big complaints, it doesn't have too much to blow me out of the water either. It is just a really good version of Mario Circuit, full of generic Mario fanfare while still managing to be a fun track. So for that, I think it deserves a low B tier. Oh boy, Airship Fortress. It makes me feel like a kid at a candy store in the 60s or something. I don't know, this analogy's dumb. Point is, it makes me ecstatic. Infiltrating one of Bowser's airships and getting to ride through every bit of it is so fun. Alongside the super energetic, somewhat ominous music as you hear the sounds of cannons firing in the distance. It's so good. And I'm a sucker for any type of purple clouds. One of my favorite aspects. Really sets this gloomy and ominous mood that's perfect for the track. And god, being launched into the cannon is so fun. I remember my first time doing this and be like, whoa, that's awesome. I actually don't remember, but it was probably like that. And then you can't forget just drifting down the tower, or dodging the missiles where you're trying to get onto the ship. Ooh, are all the Monty wrenches just pop out and you have to dodge and weave in between them? I haven't even mentioned the cool storage or engine room. In the storage you can even hit these boxes to get items like mushrooms. There's even this super cool giant castle in the background. God, it's just so good at feeling epic, with so much to it. I absolutely adore this track. And yes, it is fun to play on. Easy S tier. I don't know what the general consensus is on Wario Stadium, but that doesn't matter because I think it's pretty fun. While I do find some bits of it annoying, like these little bumps here that can make it difficult to make this turn, or these massive jumps that make it hard to control your car, you gotta take the bad with the good. Jumping through fire rings, dashing through mud, or drifting through fire, it's all super fun. I've never been a huge fan of the Wario's Daredevil type tracks, just a personal thing, but I've always found this one in particular to be a blast to play on. On top of this, it's just really charming, with the presentation here being superb. I mean, this has got to be one of the most alive-feeling tracks, with a massive audience in the back cheering you on as you're doing all these super cool stunts. Also, the wall looks like purring. Thought I should point that out. I have grown a bit of disdain for this track though over the years, with the turns and jumps feeling more and more tight and tedious each time I come back to it, and I've always had an issue with racing the CPUs on this track. They were just so far ahead of me for no reason. So while I do love the presentation and the idea of radically jumping through some obstacles, actually playing through it will place it in a mid-B tier for me. Peach Gardens. A track I'm surprised I've fallen in love with. While not a super unique concept or anything, it's still a very interesting one, especially to be included as a racetrack for Mario Kart. It's so simple, yet it's never really been touched upon before, just a massive sprawling garden that Peach owns. Running through the garden and experience it, then going to the terrace and being able to see all of it, it's just a lovely concept. I also love that Peach just has these massive chain chomps as guards. Glad to know that not all chain chomps are evil. This right here is a good boy. I love that they're just wandering around too, and the super cute hedge maze nonetheless. Plus this one right here, stuck in an internal cycle of circles. Only minor gripe I have is the placement of the flower beds is kind of awkward, the square beds specifically. They're just so awkwardly placed, and you can make turning through the areas feel weird. Also, this terrace is abnormally huge, and feels really empty. Wish there was like, at least something here, maybe some bushes or benches or something, I don't know. Overall, a super lovable and serene track that I adore the concept for, but there's just some issues that prevent it from being amazing to me. Also, as a kid, I thought these flowers looked edible. That's all. This lends itself a spot in A tier. A major jump from Peach's Garden, Bowser's Castle. Another staple of the game is making a return once again with quite a smancy redesign. While I enjoy most of the Bowser's Castle tracks, I've always been quite more fond of this one. Maybe it's just the layout, the world design, or just the cloudy gradient sky. What can I say? I'm a sucker for clouds of varying colors, especially when they're all ominous and fiery. Generally just a pleasing track to look at. Really like this little opening part especially. My complaints start when it comes to the obstacles. I mean, most are fine, the spinny platform isn't that bad, and actually has a pretty sick shortcut, though you do have to miss out on this pretty opening. My issue starts with this stupid spinny cylinder. This thing used to be the bane of my existence when I was a child. Little me just couldn't understand the complexity of a rotating stick. And falling off this thing is torture. It sends you on an alternate path that at first doesn't seem that bad, but can actually set you pretty far behind. I've lost countless races when I was just hit trying to go across, falling, and then it cost me the race. While I do adore most of the track, this stick will always just haunt my inner child. On the bright side, the spiral is really fun, going straight to the A tier. The infamous Rainbow Road makes its appearance once more, and of course, at the end of the Nitro tracks. While not having any sort of specific theming this time around, it's still an amazing track, with a ton of cool assets like these loop-de-loops you get to speed through. Done did anti-gravity 9 years before Mario Kart 8, alongside these satisfying rings that make this little ding sound as you go through them. And most importantly, the rainbow objects randomly flying through the vast void of space. As for playing it, well, it plays as you'd expect, speed being the main focus as you try your best not to fall off. They were generous to give you some guardrails during the sharp turns, which is greatly appreciated. Little me thanks you endlessly. I mean, I still fell off a lot, but less. There's nothing too special to make this stand out from the other rainbow roads. It's just a rainbow road in every sense of the word. However, this is probably one of the best, looking rainbow roads I've seen. Like the road itself, this thing. I don't know, I just think it's really pretty, and I love how there's these little transparent bits. A great rainbow road, but nothing outstanding, so a really good B tier. And we're finally done. With the Nitro tracks, that is. Need a breather? Because I sure do. Whew. Okay, that's good. So this is the first game to introduce retro tracks to the series. And it does kinda suffer because of that. Don't get me wrong, amazing addition, and I still love the fact that we got this in DS. But it had a very limited pool to choose from. Only getting tracks from Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart 64, Mario Kart Double Dash, and Mario Kart Super Circuit. Actually having to downgrade the ones from Double Dash, which I think is funny, but it does add some charm. So let's jump right into that. Starting off with Mario Circuit 1, a track from the SNES. It's, yeah. Hard to find words for this. I'll start off by saying I do actually really like that they included tracks from the 2D Mario Kart games. It gives them a chance to shine, and it feels fresh being able to drive through these games in a new engine. See what I did there? However, Mario Kart DS is still the DS, so I'm guessing they just didn't have the resources to fully expand upon making these tracks feel fresh. Like, look at Mario Kart 8. Donut Plains in that game feels fully fleshed out with a bunch of stuff added, but they still managed to keep the simplicity from the SNES version. Whereas here, I'm pretty sure that they just copied the layout and made these things more vertical. Of course, putting Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart DS side by side is not a fair comparison, but Shut up. Basically what I'm trying to say is, it looks bland. Like, really bland. It's also really short. However, I still find it fun to race on, and the music is kinda funky, so I'll give you a C tier. Moo Moo Farms. It does have a very simple and bare bones design, not changing much from the N64 version, but I really like it. It's got a lot of charm in its basicness, you know? The background just reminds me of something you'd see in a children's story, which I find really cute. Also, any Mario Kart track with these cows involved in any way gets bonus points. Admittedly, driving on it can feel kinda tedious, I guess. There's just a lot of hills and turns which don't go well together stupendously with the Mario Kart DS controls. Though there is a story attached to this track that happened recently that kinda boosted it for me, so I'm gonna share that with you. So me and my girlfriend were getting her car clean, and while cleaning it, the guys that were cleaning it just kept staring at us, which of course is weird, but we ignored it. Once they were done cleaning it though, we got in the car, and it was playing Moo Moo Farms on the radio. For whatever reason, my phone connected to the radio, despite me constantly removing it from my Bluetooth list, and just started playing the last song played on my Spotify. These poor guys had to clean my GF's car while listening to Moo Moo Farms for a good 15 minutes, which is actually really funny. My girlfriend was embarrassed, but she also thought it was funny, so it's okay. With all this combined, I give this an A tier. Peach Circuit. I cannot explain why, but I have always had an unexplainable hatred towards this track. I mean, it's okay to play on, I guess. I don't know, every time I play on it I have a hard time getting the turns right, and I never feel like I have enough time to fully charge my mini turbo. On top of that, it's very basic. The biggest issue I have with this track is the stupid castle. Yeah, I know it's the exact one from Super Circuit, but that does not make me hate it any less. I think it's just the fact that it looks nothing like Peach's castle. Like, is there any game in the series where the castle looks remotely similar to this? I mean, the iconic Peach's castle comes from Mario 64, 5 years before Super Circuit, and 9 years before Mario Kart DS. It's a fine track. I even kinda like the mountains in the background, but my anger for this track is unreasonable and I refuse to argue. So, D tier. Oh boy, Luigi Circuit. Honestly, I really love the design, and it sounds like an amazing idea on paper, but the idea in action is not that great. I mean, I've never played Double Dash, I know, sue me, but from my experience with the track here, it's just not fun to race on, especially against CPUs. I think the main issue is just these giant stretches of land. Anytime I'd race CPUs in 150, be it as a kid or now, they would always get so far ahead of me and I'd be fighting for my life to keep up. Quick reminder, I do not know how to snake, so that isn't a valid argument for this. The only saving grace for this track is the presentation. Just the overall vibe going on here is so nice. We got the general racing vibes on top of a chain chop, always a plus in my book. And my favorite part is the fixed Luigi's Mansion that you get to see in the distance. This was probably in the original, but that doesn't mean it's not nice to see here either. So while I really want to love this track just for the design, I just have too many bad memories connected to playing on it. Literally the only time I remember enjoying this track was playing it with friends. C tier. This one is very similar to Mario Circuit 1. I mean, if you held me at gunpoint and asked me which of these is Donut Plains and which one is Mario Circuit before writing the script, I'd grab the gun and shoot myself. Between the two though, I do like Donut Plains 1 a lot more. First of all, it's green. We're not in some strange barren desert, so that's nice. On top of that, it's about twice as long and has a shortcut in it. There's also this weird little dirt thing at one of the turns. It's not considered off-road because you can drift in it, but it also slows you down a little bit. Weird. I just wish they did more here, like with this lake here. Overall, better than Mario Circuit 1, but that's about it. C tier. Ah, Frappe Snowland. Frappe? Is that how you say it? Frappe? I don't know what it is about this track, but I've always felt a sort of comfort in it. It's just a cozy little snowland with snow sculptures and snowmen scattered about. It's also one of the few tracks I actually have a vivid memory of playing as a child. I think it was one of the first ones I played with my sister when I was like 4 years old or something. Pretty sure we got the game for Christmas, so the comfort probably comes from nostalgia or something. Actually playing through the track though is just fine. I don't really have any issues with it, kinda mid I guess. This part with the snowman around the giant Mario is charming, but a little annoying. And these massive ice walls are pretty neat. Mostly love the sound it makes when you hit them. You know, I think this is one of the only tracks where you can actually like easily see the walls of the skybox. Like, it's right there, that's a corner. I like to imagine we're in a snow globe or something. Overall, I think it's a really nice track that brings good vibes. Side note, these trees here have always reminded me of Frosted Mini Wheats. Like, every time I saw these, I think of that one commercial where they just are animated and alive. I get reminded of the taste of the cereal, and I haven't had them since I was like 6, so that's kinda weird. Enough reminiscing, B tier. Bowser's Castle 2. I despise this track. Every time I play this track, I am quickly reminded of why I hate it and why my hatred for it only grows. It's just not fun, nor visually appealing. Primarily these stupid jump pad things. If I haven't made it clear yet, being airborne in this game makes it really hard to control your movement. And if you jump at the wrong angle, you'll be launched in a direction with no control until you hit the ground. And with how many lava gaps are in this stage, it's very easy to lose control of your cart and fall in. Also, this one is just stupid. On top of this, there's so many long stretches of lane where CPUs will easily speed super far ahead of you. The only chances you really have to catch up are these turns and boost pads, which, by the way, are very tedious to try to hit because they're hidden around corners for whatever reason. On top of this, the track is really tight, so it's very easy to get hit off course when you're going around other racers. This doesn't even have a super pretty aesthetic or anything to back it up. I'm not saying it's ugly or anything, but it's most certainly not beautiful. I do think the lava kinda looks satisfying though. Kinda looks like SpaghettiOs. God, am I hungry or something? The background itself is just alright. I will admit the music is pretty funky, but that does not save the track. Basically, I just find this track very annoying and I don't like it. Lowest D tier. Baby Park. Okay, I'll talk about it. I've always heard a lot of hate for Baby Park, and like, I don't get it. I don't love the track, but I don't think it's the spawn of Satan or anything. I've always kind of been neutral on it. It's an okay track, though it is super basic. It's literally an oval. The real fun of playing it comes from interacting with friends because you'll be lapping them constantly. But with CPUs, it is very lame. Real people are what makes this fun. And unfortunately, in our day and age, it's pretty hard to find people to play Mario Kart DS with you. Outside of that, this is probably the weakest design for a Baby Park out of all the games. It just takes some assets from Double Dash, turns them into 2D sprites, and calls it a day. So while I don't hate it, it is very bare bones and boring. High D tier. Koopa Beach 2. A track that I feel many would dislike. I mean, when I hear anything about SNES tracks in this game, it's typically negative, but I actually really love this track. So yeah, maybe I do like beach tracks. While the design does remain simplistic, still just being updated assets from the original, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I think the spotted grass alongside the moving waves is really charming, and I find racing on it to be really fun. It's a pretty short circle, but I like drifting in between these deep pools, and I always end up lapping the CPUs, which I think is fun. Also, I really adore the music here. It's just so relaxing and fun. Still nothing extraordinary, but it does tickle a little part of my brain, so I give this a high B tier. Choco Mountain. One of my favorite tracks as a kid, but now it's still pretty good. I mean, any track with fog gets a check in my book. I do hear mixed things about the track, but to me, I just think it's fun. The ones who don't like it are the ones who fall off at this part and then proceed to complain about how bad the track is. Like, my guy, it's just a skill issue. And also these jumps at the end are just super fun. I know I've been complaining about the jumps in this game, but these ones are just super high, so whenever you jump you just get launched, and I've always found it really charming. Also, I really like this loop around the lake, while these boulders would be falling down around you. Just a super fun track to race on. As for the visuals, it ranges from walls I can eat, Minecraft cobblestone, to walls I can eat. So I think that's pretty good. Not breathtaking, but delicious. Also, the music is so good. Overall, really fun with some decent visuals. A solid A tier. So, Luigi Circuit. A track I think many forget exists, which is fair, but one that I adore. I mean, it's a track that's labeled Circuit that isn't just a basic sunny green plain. Instead, it's a stormy green plain. That's all that I need in life. Any type of level that includes rain does get a major plus for me. I'm a sucker for storms, what can I say? Which is ironic, because I used to have astrophobia. So yeah, I love the stormy aesthetic, with the numerous dark clouds among the rocky terrain in the distance, rain coming down hard, and puddles scattered throughout. Also, Luigi Blimp. It's what I think makes the track whole. I do find the 3 Weather Institute things in the distance a little weird, mostly because there's 3 of them, but who am I to judge? As for the track itself, well, it's another GBA track, so it's pretty generic, but it is still really fun. None of the turns are annoying or anything. Only real problem I have are the puddles don't load in until you're close to them, but I've memorized the layout, so I don't really have any issues with it. Overall, a super charming course that I really only love the vibes for alone. A solid B tier. Mushroom Bridge. I'm honestly astounded that the only game Mushroom Bridge has shown up in besides Double Dash is DS. Not you. You don't count. I'm astounded just because of how good the track is. I mean, even though it has been downgraded to be put onto the DS, it still has so much charm to it, with just so many little details scattered about. Overall, it's just really pretty to look at. Also, of course, it has a tunnel. Bonus points. As to the design, it is really fun to play, with plenty of space to make turns and avoid the moving vehicles. I have heard a lot of people complain that you can't go on the bridge anymore like in Double Dash, which I never played Double Dash, so I'm not super sad about it, but I can admit this right away is pretty boring to go through, unless you're cool like me and try to make your cart stay in this little line. Also, I love this little shortcut here. I've always found it fun to do when I had a mushroom. Can't forget the music is really funky. I just love a lot of the retro tracks in the Mario Kart DS sound fun. Altogether, just a really fun and charming track that needs to be added to the next booster wave, my god. Hi A tier. Oh yay! Choco Island. Just gonna put it out there, I hate racing on this track. It should be pretty obvious at this point. Look at how many jumps there are. Like, come on man, it makes it so hard to control your vehicle. Which sucks even more with these piranha plants that make you do a big spin out. On top of the numerous jump pads, there's a huge section of mud with no clear way to approach it. I mean, there's this little bank spot where item boxes are, but even when I do time trials, I still take the same route because it seems faster. So getting the item boxes isn't even like a challenge or anything. And god, this tight section at the beginning is the worst. Not only can you get knocked off into the road super easily, but there's tons of piranha plants at the borders of this path. The only time I feel like I'm in control on this map is at the end during a flat turning section. Maybe I just suck and I'm stupid, but I've never liked racing here. Alternatively, I do kinda like the design here. I probably think it's ugly, which I get, it's not the most appeasing yellow combinations, but I don't know, I've always really liked the color palette. I also love the Mario World Mountain. Yeah, it was in the original, but it's still nice. Also, I do really like the music. Despite how much I like looking at the track, I despise playing on it, so this gets a low D tier. Now this. I like this. As mentioned previously in the Luigi Mansion track, I'm an absolute sucker for anything horror, especially in a non-horror game, and this appeals to me on another level. But before I get ahead of myself in the design aspect, racing here is really fun to me. It's got some simple turns throughout the majority of the track, but not to the point that it's boring. It's pretty easy to chain these turns together to speed through, which is always what works best with the tracks. Also love this little shortcut that you can just hop over in the building, it's always been my favorite part. There's some annoying straightaways though, I have to admit, but that doesn't ruin it for me. No, the design. Oh, the design. There have been plenty of Mario Kart tracks centered around driving on some type of boardwalk or pier, Ghost Valley and Blue Lake for example, but they never quite capture what Banshee Boardwalk does for me. This boardwalk just feels so desolate and haunting, just being out in the middle of the ocean, looking out and revealing nothing more than an endless black void. The only source of light that you have are these lanterns throughout the boardwalk. And the only life in sight is the boost who hover over you and the massive fish that jumps over you at the dip. And some supers, I guess. Most interesting to me though is this building, clearly being very old as shown by how much it's deteriorated, with nothing more than a welcome sign to greet you at the door. The building itself is mostly empty, with nothing but a hole in the floor, a couple support beams, a casket, an old brick fireplace, and swoopers. A bit disappointing, but it does raise the question of what this building is. Why is it out here in the middle of the ocean? What happened to it? Why is this place abandoned? The mystery of Banshee Boardwalk is what fascinates me most. All of this alongside the eerie music that plays as you ride along the boardwalk instantly made me fall in love with this track. The only thing that I wish they kept is the fog in the original N64 version, though the endless black void is arguably just as good, so I don't mind. While not for everyone, my love for horror makes this one of, if not, my favorite track in the entire series. High S tier. Sky Garden, a vast contrast to the last track, but certainly a welcome one. Out of all the 2D courses adapted to this 3D game, this is the only one that I've grown more and more fond of over the years. I don't know if it's just the atmosphere, how fun the track is, or the bop and music, but I always love playing this. To start off, I love driving through this track. Going the plane route is really fun with a bunch of turns scattered throughout. What makes it amazing is how many shortcuts you can take. There's really one just around every corner. There's 4 in total, with 2 requiring mushrooms to take. The cool ones though are this jump pad with an item box and this one, which you probably are supposed to use a mushroom for, but you can also just jump across it, which I think is nifty. It's probably not faster, but I don't care. This, alongside the theme of this beautiful cloud garden with tons of vines poking out, is super pretty. We also got some stunning bluish, greenish, turquoise-ish rocks across the road, which I really like. And of course, we have to get some points for bringing back the Luigi blimp. It's just, it's so fun. I currently believe this belongs in the realm of the A tiers, but who knows, maybe we'll continue rising up in my ranks. And we're finally reaching the end with Yoshi Circuit. As a kid, this was probably my #1 track, but I now know that this was probably just because of my obsession with Yoshi. One time I literally got a pack of gummies with Yoshi in them, and I put them on my dresser and just kept them there. Anyways, back on topic. I do love and adore Yoshi Circuit. The fact it's just shaped like Yoshi is so charming, and it was magical realizing that whenever I clicked on the mini-map as a kid. And while the track is still super fun to drive on with a bunch of difficult but satisfying turns, I gotta say, this is one of the barest looking big tracks. I don't know, man, it just looks naked. I mean, the tops of the island are nothing but grassy textures. There's nothing going on the outside, and the only inhabitants on the island are piranha plants. Literally, the only sort of design is the signs and billboards throughout. Charming, yes, but it just feels like it could be so much more. Like the Mario Kart 8 version, for example. It's not horrible or painful to look at or anything, it's just kinda boring. Also, this is the only track that contains Birdo in some capacity, so negative points. Overall, the appearance of the track doesn't bring down the quality of how fun it is to race, nor the amazing music that plays. I give this a solid B tier. And that's all of the Mario Kart DS tracks. While I believe the track quality here is a pretty mixed bag, that doesn't stop me from coming back to this game constantly just to have a good time. Be it good tracks, Bowser's Castle 2, the charm of the DS 3D models, funky controls, or just the amazing soundtrack to tie it all together. It just makes coming back to this game worth it every time. And I'm sure a lot of you that played this as a kid can relate to that sentiment. So if you enjoyed my ranking, you should totally share your own rankings down below. I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on the game as well. Any discussion about Mario Kart DS is a good discussion. Unless it's negative, because then I won't listen to you. Okay, bye, love you.
So today, I went and got some frosted mini wheats, as you can see. I missed the old mascot. This one kind of looks like it'll kill you if you feed it after midnight, but you know, it's whatever. It says they're high in fiber. And I personally don't know if that's a good thing or not. Get back up here. You know what I'm eating. So I'm not really a fan of cereal. I don't typically eat it, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to put it in first and then you boil it. Got some good 2% milk, as you do. Just kind of like, you know. Oh yeah. And now let's see what the trees from Frappe Snowland taste like. Moment of truth. They taste similar to how I remember them, but like slightly worse. Like really grainy, you know? They're not bad. I just remember them tasting better. They have like a similar taste though, just kind of different. So we just changed the formula. They're just alright, I guess. I wouldn't like choose to eat this though, you know? They're like okay, but like I don't want to eat it. You can end up with my cat here. Say hi, Abby. Okay.